this is Prince of Somnia, and welcome to Let's Play Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age. Whew. It feels a little weird for me to Let's Play another Dragon Quest game so soon after not actually even finishing another Dragon Quest game, but I love this series to death and I finally feel validated for liking it as much as I do, so here we are. I was meaning to, get this LP out on release date, but stuff happened. Bitrate's a thing, apparently. So yeah, I couldn't actually do it on release, but I'm excited to be able to do it at least right now. So if you're interested in a way more modern Dragon Quest experience that brings in a lot of classic Dragon Quest charm with a lot of new and improved JRPG elements, or if you're just here to experience what I personally think is definitely in the top 3 Dragon Quest games of all time, then join me in Let's Play Dragon Quest XI's.
This child, he is the one?
There's the mark. There's no mistaking it.
Oh my. What in heavens are you doing here? And after that awful storm, too. However did you survive? Oh, you're a jolly one. What's this? Oh, you poor thing. Come here. Come here. Oh, there's no need to be frightened anymore. You're safe now, little fellow.
Thanks so much, you're a lifesaver. Trust me to lose my headscarf just before the big ceremony. So it's finally here, the big day. I can't believe we're going to be climbing all the way up there. Looks like Sandy's keen to lead the way. Come on, best not keep her waiting.
And with that, we are now at the Cobblestone Tor base after seeing our heroes' tragic origins, as you can say. But anyway, you can see there in the corner we have our mini-map, and a little button that says Y, open to mini-map. You can kind of see a little map of the areas that you're in, with a few identifying features such as where the exits lead to, and things like that. Those pink dots you can see on the map, it generally means that there's some storyline important information that you have available to you. Speaking to people like this is generally a good idea because they can often point you in the right direction in the eventuality that you end up lost in this massive JRPG. I mean, hey, it could happen. Anyway, something I do want to talk about right off the bat, and I believe we could change it somewhere in here. Where was it? Ooh, that is the home button. I did not mean to push that. Oh. Anyway, something I wanted to talk about before we really get into the thick of things is that if you start the game, you have an option of starting in the Draconian Quest mode, which I believe also exists in this version instead of just the PS4 version. And it's basically a way for you to add restrictions to your gameplay, such as stopping you from running away, making enemies stronger, that sort of a thing. I'm playing with none of those settings turned on, and I will remain as such for the entirety of the game. Anyway, let's talk to these two. Aww. So encouraging. But what he's mentioning there is that there is a menu option. If you press the X or triangle button to open up the menu, there is an option here called Party Talk, where you can talk to the people in your party. I really don't know what you were expecting, but in case you were expecting something else, don't. So yeah. We've got actually a lot of menu options here that we can't really do a whole lot with, and I'll kind of explain as we go along, but in general, this is your items, this is your equipment, this is the magic you can cast on the field. There's some magic that you can cast on the field, some that you can only cast in battle, and some that you can cast in both situations. I just showed off Party Talk. Attributes basically shows you your party stats, and if you go to everyone, it shows you your gold, the last major locations visited, and other things that we don't quite have yet. Nice thing about this is that you can even see your title, Boy of Cobblestone. descriptive. The miscellaneous menu has a lot of different things that, again, we can't really do a whole lot with, and I'll kind of explain these as we go, but the ones that are probably the most relevant to you right now are traveler's tips for little tutorials. You can review the stuff that you've seen in little tutorial pop-ups as we go along in the game. Info just tells you a few metrics about the adventure so far. This will expand as we continue on. We don't have quests yet, so I'll show that off later. And then there's also the system settings, which, now that I'm thinking about it, I'll actually mess around with a little bit because I want music and sound effects turned down, but voices left up so that we can hear the voices during cutscenes a little bit better. I always kind of do this in games because it usually happens that the music is just a little too loud and overpowers the voices when they're all set to max settings. We will leave the soundtrack as symphonic because it is, honest to God, so much better than the synthesized version that was the only version available in the original PS4 version, and the entire reason why I bought this game specifically for the Let's Play. I would have just done the PS4 version were it not for the fact that the PS4 version's soundtrack is synthesized in MIDI format.
Humble folk of Cobblestone, great land spirits, hearth and home. That's how it goes, isn't it? My granddad's been teaching me the prayer ever since I was little. He reckons the spirit of the land really does live on Cobblestone Tor, you see. As long as I can remember, he's been preparing me for this day. The day it would finally be my turn to climb all the way up there and offer my thanks. I just wonder whose idea it was in the first place, sending the village's young folk on such a dangerous errand. What if I take a tumble and do myself a mischief? Well, not to worry. Since you and me were born on the same day, I'm lucky enough to have a bodyguard along for the journey. Come on then. That craggy old thing won't climb its... Oh. They're coming this way!
And with that, we've got our first little battle here with a bunch of slimes.
Crikey.
Now, slimes, they don't actually do anything special at all. So all they really do is attack. Later on, when you're particularly more powerful than the average slime even, you'll be able to just have them run away from the fight. Okay, I see what was happening there. I accidentally set our hero's tactics a little bit, and he was kind of autopiloting. Anyway, for battles, you basically have this menu here for attack, abilities, spells, items, defend, and equipment. So attack is basically your regular physical attack. You slice them. For abilities, we don't have those yet, but those are special skills that are usually tied to either weapons or some special parameter that we'll get into a little bit later, whereas spells are really more your magic. You can use items in battle. Basically, if you have any, you can just use them through the items menu. The equipment menu lets you switch out your equipment mid-fight, so I could just switch to the Cobblestone Greatsword right now and just whip it out. But I'll stick with the sword. And then defend. Basically what that does is that you spend your turn defending and you reduce the damage that you take greatly. This reduces all damage, including magic damage, but there are, I believe, some abilities that pierce the defend command, so watch out for that. And we got a medicinal herb for this.
Crikey, I wasn't expecting that. I know they were only little, but I'd have been done for if you and Sandy hadn't been here to help me. And now we've got to go through that horrible, dingy cave. Just our luck. I'll bet you anything that's where those awful things came from. Well, as long as you're with me, I've got nothing to worry about. Come on, let's get going.
Alright, so that was easy enough. A little bit of a tutorial. I'll explain a little bit more about stats and things like that a little later, just so that I'm not barraging you with information. This episode is going to be long, just because of how much information I have to cover in episode 1, but other than that, it'll be fine. Oh, that must be the Cobblestonian prayer. Neat. But if we go back here, there's actually a treasure chest for us that I missed the first time I recorded this. It contains a pot lid. So let's take a look at our equipment bag. By the way, in order to navigate menus, it's usually better to use the D-pad. And in battle, with the camera mode I have set up, and I'll show that off a little bit later, I have to use the D-pad to maneuver the menu. Or the D buttons, or whatever you call them if you're playing with Joy-Cons. I'm playing with a Pro Controller. Anyway, the pot lid doesn't offer that much increase in defense, but it does have a block chance. All shields in this game have a % chance to just outright block an incoming physical attack. Now, you could just go with the Greatsword instead. You will do a lot more damage throughout the game than you ever really could with just a single long or regular sword. But you lose out on the defensive opportunities afforded to you by shields. Not only the defense bonus, but also the block chance, and also there are certain shields later in the game that offer elemental protection against certain abilities that you really, really want to have because a lot of those abilities can ruin your day. Now, granted, it's not as critical as it was in Dragon Quest VI, where that means the difference between you being able to win a fight versus getting wiped. But do keep in mind that, and I'll sort of spoil this a little bit for how the party setup's going to go, Loto here is going to be the only thing we really have that acts as a tank for over half the game. So yeah. Personally, I recommend going sword and board just because I like having defense in this game, and it's usually easier for me to outlast a boss than it is for me to outdamage a boss. But if that's not your playstyle and you want the hero to do a lot of damage, the Greatsword's an option. I personally don't think it's necessary for the hero to be the main DPS because we will have party members that act that way later on, but it's an option. It's an option. Anyway, that tutorial tip was showing off that if we walk up to an enemy and press the A button when it has that little marker above its head, we get a preemptive strike and do a little bit of damage and also have a little bit of advantage in the fight. So that's really nice. Anyway, the tactics menu here, it basically lets you alter a few things such as the party tactics, which I'll talk about a little bit later. You can also view the party status in general, like the status ailments they have. You can use this to flee, but I generally don't want to. Or you can use this to change either the camera mode of the battle or the speed of the battle. I'm going to leave the speed as it is because I don't think it's that slow, but if you're like grinding or something like that, you might want to turn it up. Additionally, that camera mode I was showing off basically determines whether I'm allowed to do something like this, where I can just sort of free run around the battlefield. When you do this, you can maneuver the menu with the D-pad, by the way, and you kind of have to, actually. You can kind of position yourself wherever you want and move whatever you want and control where the camera is during the battle, but other than having really fine control over the camera angle of the action, this has no mechanical purpose whatsoever. You won't do any more or less damage depending on where you're standing on the battlefield. You won't avoid or accidentally enter any area of effect abilities depending on where you're standing. No, it doesn't work that way. So do keep in mind that this is really more so a look and feel enhancement than it is an actual mechanical effect. That's what I'll say about that. Anyway, we have our two companions here with Gemma and Sandy. Sandy will either use a regular physical attack for about 6 damage, or he'll bark at an enemy and scare them, which basically costs them a turn. Gemma will do nothing unless you're either low on HP or MP, in which case she'll either use a medicinal herb or a single file, depending on which one you're low on. I mean, of course, right now we have no MP at all. Like, we don't even have a maximum. Oh, there we go. There's that shield block. We don't actually have any maximum MP, so she won't do that, but she will later. And speaking of which,
Well done.
we get a level up for that. And now I'll explain a little bit more about what the stats are and what the stats do, now that we have a very convenient little pop-up menu here. Let's see. So, maximum HP, your hit points determine how much health your character has. When they get to 0, your character dies. And when your entire party is dead, it's game over. So don't do that. MP is basically a resource that you use to cast spells or use certain abilities that you get later on in the game. It's basically easy enough. There are certain items that recover HP or MP, but resting at an inn or a campsite will fully recover both. Your strength determines your attack power in the game. Your attack power is the sum of your strength stat plus your weapon's attack stat, or attack bonus. In a similar vein, resilience determines how much defense you have. Your total defense is the sum of your gear's defensive bonus plus your resilience stat. Agility is used to determine evasion, as well as turn order, and deftness is used to determine your crit rate, as well as your chance to flee from a fight, or your chance to surprise enemies at the beginning of a fight. Magical Might and Magical Mending are kind of your magical potencies for attack magic and healing magic in general. Although Magical Mending also affects the usage of revival spells as well. I'll explain a little bit more on that later. Magical Might, as well, also actually influences your debuff chance. So that's pretty nice, but we don't have debuffs quite yet. And then Charm is basically like a stat wherein a high charm will cause enemies to lose their turn by being mesmerized by your character. Which is hilarious, but I'm not sure why that's a thing. Although there are 2 characters later on that have skill trees that are based on Charm, so it's something to keep in mind, but it's not something I would worry too much about. So basically just save your Charm for them, effectively. Now, I think I glossed over it, but we did collect a medicinal herb from a little glowing point to the north in the Cobblestone Tor. Points like those are called, I don't know what they're called, but they're basically harvest points. And you can effectively continuously harvest from them every so often when they respawn. I'm not going to be making a habit of showing off where harvest points are, nor am I really going to be making a habit of showing off absolutely every single treasure that you could collect from random items like pots or anything like that. I'll show off the more relevant ones, but I'm not going to be entirely thorough. 1, to encourage exploration on your part. 2, because doing so made the episodes drag on very long when I was testing the recording for this, and I no longer want to do that.
Go on. You can do it. Go on.
Needlers here, they will occasionally do a little dance and waste their turn,
Fight, and fight some more.
which is humorous, but other than that, they're not special other than having slightly more HP than slimes. They don't really do anything special other than that, and sometimes healing themselves with medicinal herbs. Anyway, I'm going to be more thorough here in the Cobblestone Tor just to kind of show off the sort of things you should expect to find. Like, you can sometimes find treasure in pots like these, for example, or barrels, or chests of drawers, things like that. So basically, just interact with a whole bunch of stuff, and eventually you'll find something nice. But again, I'm not going to be making too huge a habit of doing this in, like, towns and whatnot. Otherwise, the episodes will just drag on forever, and no one wants that. Least of all me. That copper ore we just got, that's a crafting material. We'll get into what we can craft later on, but stuff like that is good to get your hands on if you're just wandering around and happen to see a little sparkly spot. If you're particularly lost on collecting certain things like that, you can just look them up. It's not that hard to determine where you might be able to find them. In-game and out-of-game, there are resources to find them. So, that's nice. Alright, so we're almost there. Not too much further now.
Look at all this fog. Is this normal, do you think? Cole? Quick! You have to help him! It's not fog at all. It's more monsters.
Alright, we've got a mini-boss here with a pair of Smogs. Now, here's something I haven't shown off yet. We got the Frizz spell earlier, which is basically your very weak basic elemental, or fire elemental single targeting spell. Does around 10 damage, and it costs 2 MP, so it's pretty cheap too. Although I guess that's half our MP, but, you know, relatively speaking, it's pretty cheap.
You can do it.
Now the nice thing about these Smogs is that they go down in 2 casts of the Frizz spell, so they should be really easy to deal with. And, because we have Gemma here, she'll usually use either a medicinal herb or a single file to keep us on our feet. I was really hoping she was going to use a single file, because I really need one right now.
Fight and fight some more. Go on.
Thank you, game.
Crumbs.
You're very useful, Gemma.
Here you go.
Finally! But yeah, both of those items will fully recover your HP or MP, so that's nice.
I'm so
Ooh, and we got another level up.
I'm sorry, Gemma. I only came up here because I thought it'd be funny to jump out and surprise you. But then those monsters appeared.
What in the world is going on? I never heard anything about monsters appearing on the tour before. But never mind that now. Whatever were you thinking? You could have been killed. You take Sandy and get back to the village this instant.
Yes, Gemma. Sorry, Gemma.
You saved my bacon again. I knew you were tough, but crikey, you really have grown into quite the hero. Not far to the top now. Typical. It would have to go and start raining, wouldn't it? Come on, let's get a move on.
Alrighty then. Yeah, so that fight's easy enough. Now if you see icons like this, the little blue circle with an exclamation mark in it, you walk up to whatever it's pointing to and press the A button, or the X button, if you're playing the PlayStation version. You can interact with it, and it usually means climbing something. Like that. Easy enough. Small ledges like this, your hero will automatically sidle up against the wall, so you don't have to like press or hold any button, you'll just kind of do it. So, that's convenient, I guess. Begs the question of why that's there, but you know, we could climb down this rope, and even then we can just press like, I think it's the B button to slide down the rope, or we can just jump. Either or. There's no fall damage in this game, so the only thing falling will do to you is potentially set back your progress. And there we go. That's the entirety of Cobblestone Tour. All that's left now is to head up to the summit and say our prayers, I guess. Yeah, that little part there is just a tutorial about how to navigate the terrain, and that's about it.
Here we are at last. It's such a shame about the weather. I was really looking forward to that view. Well, we better say the prayer and get this ceremony over with, eh? What was that? Help! Help me! Help! We're alive. But how? That great big flash of lightning. It was almost like you made it happen. Look! The mark on your hand! Huh? Oh, it stopped. Well, we can worry about that later. All I know is that you saved me yet again. I don't know what I'd do without you. Now, we really had better be finishing up this ceremony. Humble folk of Cobblestone, great land spirits, hearth and home. Lift your voices up in prayer, sing it across all our drear. Blessed are we since days of yore, let it be so forevermore. Wow! Look! It just goes on and on and on. Whoever dreamed up this ceremony must have had this in mind. They wanted to show us how huge our world really is. Well, that's it. It's all over and now we're grown-ups. Shall we head down and tell Grandad and everyone? They'll all be waiting for us at the bottom.
All right. And we are now officially adults. Hooray! But anyway, yeah. We are now officially adults of Cobblestone. Hooray! That was a nice, neat little experience, I guess. Although, Gemma was a little not very helpful. But, it happens. Next time on Let's Play Dragon Quest XI-S, we'll return to Cobblestone to celebrate. See you guys then.